What's a women's thing men should absolutely start doing? My dad refused to use hand lotion for a while and he kept getting big cracks in his knuckles. The cold would destroy his skin. He would only put lotion on when it was basically bleeding, by which point it can't really do much help. Told my dad during the height of COVID that we were washing our hands so much at work that I was having to use lotion. He asked, "Did it make you feel like a girl?" "No, Dad. It made me feel like someone whose masculinity wasn't so fucking fragile that I'd be worried about turning into a girl just by putting some lotion on." Different generations, man. My brother started washing his face when he hit puberty. He complained that his face felt really tight afterwards, and I said, "Yeah, you're supposed to put moisturizer on after you wash it." And he said he couldn't because lotion was for girls. So he stopped washing his face and his skin broke out really bad. My parents had to explain to him that men and women both use lotion. But why don't they develop skincare routine that isn't oily and wildly uncomfortable to wear? I pretty much always deal with cracked hands. It's literally less annoying to deal with pain, bandages, and bleeding than to deal with oily fingers. You put lotion on, touch your phone, it gets filthy. Lotion won't absorb into naturally dry hands. It'll just sit on there and make you incapable of utilizing your hands. That absolutely does exist. I hate the oily feeling you're talking about. You have to use the right amount, which really just does take practice. And you start by dabbing it on the back of your hands, not the front. And then you rub the backs together. I know that sounds weird, but it will start to feel normal after a while. You only need a tiny bit of lotion on your fingers or palms on the bottom. It's enough to just about fully rub it in on the back, and then the excess goes to your elbows, knees, etc. If mine still feel oily, I'll rub them somewhere dry like my back or tummy. Look a little weird, but it keeps me from that oily feeling if I'm using a really moisturizing lotion. My hands also dry out very easily and crack in the winter. I always put it on the back of my hands first, then rub it thoroughly over that area and my fingers, especially getting it into the area between my fingers where the skin tends to crack. My palms are getting just a thin coating. Then rub it in really thoroughly and maybe wipe my hands with a paper towel if the greasy feeling persists. It's enough to soften my hands up and prevent most of the cracking. The greasy feeling usually doesn't last long. And then my hands are good until the next time I wash them. But we're talking a small amount on the backs of your hands, don't be slathering it on. My face would feel so dry and gross after shaving and my hands would crack in the winter. I saw my mom use oil of Olay, so I tried that on my face and it was great. Started in my teens and been moisturizing for 20 plus years. It's funny when people are surprised. Though it doesn't happen so much with other guys my age, they don't really care. Anytime my mom would see me do it, she would be so impressed and happy I did lol. She wished my stepdad would do it too. I don't understand why people wouldn't. Granted, I use a man's moisturizer now lol. I don't really care about the branding, it's just the least greasy and fastest drying one I've found. I think it's Vaseline in a black bottle. Very dapper. Man's lotion? I don't use the stuff because it's for a man, it just happens to be packaged to appeal to men, probably to help get over the stigma men apparently still feel. Given some responses below about using a stereotypically feminine product. I think someone gave it to me, or my wife grabbed it one day, or it was on sale some reason anyway, and the Vaseline stuff has no odor, although my kids say it does. They won't use it, and most importantly it dries really fast. I hate moisturizing my hands and then rubbing them together for 10 minutes waiting for them to stop being sticky or slimy feeling. Also, on top of liking it a bit better, it's much cheaper than oil of Olay. I get a giant pump bottle for about the price of a regular small-sized Olay bottle. I think men's products like that are often cheaper than women's, for no real reason, just maybe because women are more likely to buy it regardless. My mom was confused why we went through so much more conditioner than shampoo. It was kind of embarrassing when she brought it up at Christmas lunch one year when the extended family was there, and we're discussing shampoo, and I said, "I just shampoo, I never really put conditioner in my hair, because my hair is so short." Getting checked out by a specialist. There's a reason colon cancer has a higher mortality rate among men when it's actually one of the most preventable cancers. The thought of having a colonoscopy done makes them squirm. In the US, you can also arrange for a Cologuard screening where you literally just mail in your poop and get tested for certain colon cancers. It shouldn't replace regularly scheduled colonoscopies, but it can be done between them. In my high school, we had the option to take technical specializations. I was thinking sewing or electricity, but ultimately stigma from my peers made me go for electricity. Don't get me wrong, both were great choices. I had a great time, and learning everything about electricity has allowed me to save good money on repairs, plus make some projects. But man, how I'd love to know to sew a hole in my clothes for free. It's quite hard to learn in practical classes as an adult. Mostly you have to go for YouTube, and it ain't that helpful. I'm female, cannot sew. Technically, but I am bad at the okay I'm done not. The day my fianc ripped a hole in his pants and asked me if I had any needle and thread, I was like, oh no, I can't sew very well, and he said, I don't need you to sew, I just don't have the supplies. He mends all the holes. He's gonna fix my coat pocket this weekend since I ripped it on our weekend trip. It's awesome. I also feel like it's a good brag for you single men. Most of us just aren't expecting a man to be able to sew, as backwards and even sexist as it is. Impress them, fellas. I got tired of seeing my wife grab cheap two-handled non-woven cloth bags at conventions that never lasted to carry her stuff to work. I sewed up a similar size bag from durable materials that she has already used longer than any of the others up, and told me she got compliments from workmates on it. If you get an older black iron style Singer made in the first half of the 20th century, you can sew light leather and rubber inner tubes. Say you want a water-resistant outer bottom of a bag. Minimalist wallets are in easy reach. Search Craigslist or etc. for Singer. More repair parts available, and machines under $100. Sometimes just a dusting oil and reset thread tension, and they are back in business to more extensive repairs and electrical cord replacements. Modern machines with zigzag and fashion cams have many plastic pieces. I recently bought a new set of hockey clothes, but it was missing some Velcro straps that make a huge difference. So I bought some Velcro and sewed it onto my pants. $10 fix, rather than buying a different pair that would have been $70 more. I've also found a lot of super cheap clothes at Kohl's and the like that have a small rip in them. I sew it together, and bam, $100 hoodie for $5. Biggest win so far was when my girlfriend got a free 300400 designer coat for free because it had a small rip and the zipper broke. Already had thread and needle, so free fix there. Bought some zipper hardware for $10, which came with like 30 sets of stuff to repair zippers. Fixed the zipper, and the cost works great now. I've fixed 2 additional zippers since. I'm not even good at sewing. It's usually kind of ugly, but I can hide most of the ugly on the inside where no one sees, and if you use the right color thread, it's hard to notice small repairs. I'm a woman and always hated sewing. It caused my best friend's mom to forbid her daughter to be friends with me anymore back in elementary school. In a fit of being fed up with it, we went to a girls' club camp where we learned it alongside etiquette classes and other home ec type stuff. I wrote sewing is dumb, and she marched that over to my parents' shop, gave a hole at S's speech, and that was the end of that friendship. She started homeschooling all the kids shortly after. Now I'm married to a man who can sew up a hole in our comforter and close up a cut in a shirt I accidentally made while opening its package. I started sewing to make a quilt out of a pile of old denim jeans while I was laid up recovering from a motorcycle crash. After doing a few quilts and hemming a few pairs of jeans and a little studying and research, I can take 4 measurements of any human body and make a custom-fitted farmer-made, not tailor-made kilt that fits like a glove and looks as good as any store-bought kilt. My mother taught me how to mend my clothes when I was a kid, and now my friends and roommates come to me to fix holes and rips in their clothes. I've always wanted to learn to do more than just hand sewing and mending, but couldn't find anybody to teach me the basics, and I wasn't understanding any of the online stuff I watched. Even just learning to mend a tear, put on a new button, etc. is so crazy beneficial. I'm a seamster and grew up learning how to sew from my mom. Garments, alterations, hems, quilts, pillowcases, stuffed animals, literally anything. And I took it for granted until I dated someone who had no clue how to put a button on a shirt or do a simple whip stitch, blanket stitch, or even running stitch. Folks ask for help and look at me like it's black magic when I mend a tiny tear on a seam. And I adore visible mending when I can cause it so fun. My dad never went to hospitals unless it was absolutely necessary. One time he was riding his motorcycle in the country and he crashed, ended up breaking his leg. He was in an area that had no reception, so this motherfucker walked on his broken leg 5 miles to the hospital. Since people are saying they have a lot of respect for him, I might as well follow up with this last thing. He committed suicide by crashing his car. He was strong physically when it came to pain, but he had a lot of mental pain he couldn't handle. Men need to take better care of their mental health and stop focusing on what makes you manly. My 6-year-old nephew was pushed out of a tall cat tree by his 8-year-old sister on the morning of a winter vacation trip to Disney World. He said it really hurt, but my niece told him if he told their parents he'd have to go to the hospital because it was probably broken, and that meant they wouldn't go to Disney World, so he agreed to man up and not tell. He wore his big puffer jacket to hide his arm and waited until the plane had taken off to show it to his mom. Well, they ended up with his dad taking him from the airport in Orlando to the hospital and yet broken. He had to go back the next day to see a specialist and ended up with a pin or something in it and a cast and a follow-up with another specialist back home. Turns out his sister missed that first day at Disney too, as she had a stomach flu and was puking everywhere. I was sure glad I skipped that vacation. He ended up fully recovered, but I'm impressed he hit a badly broken arm and didn't cry about it for hours at age 6. Also, he go to Disney. My dad recently fell off his bike and landed straight on his arm, which broke both his elbow and shoulder. Some people rushed up to him with 911 already on the phone, and he turned them down and continued to walk 10 kilometers home with his bike instead. Took another 4 days of my mom basically yelling at him for him to go to the hospital, which ended up as an acute surgery. Just dad things. Coming from someone in their lower 30s who have had their hips and shoulder replaced, ignored illnesses until hospitalization, waiting until the last minute for dental work, just fucking don't wait. If you notice an issue, get it checked out. Oh, this crippling pain in both hips are probably just pulled muscles. I can't use my right arm because I just overused it today. It'll go away. I'm vomiting uncontrollably while feverish. It's a stomach bug. Why is my eyeball entirely filled with blood and sometimes becomes loose in the socket? Oh, Aunt mugged and hit across the face by a bat, but it'll heal. What the faff? No, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't be basically half of a human because of my pride, ignorance, both. My hyper-masculine uncle, he's gay, but was raised by a homophobic father, had a lump on his throat when he was 20 and still living at home. His mum, my gran, eventually convinced him to go to the doctor. Cyst, he says, and sends uncle home. Gran is a district nurse and really not happy about this lump, and Lord knows how she did. It must have taken all her strength and every bit of nagging breath she had in her, because my uncle is one stubborn bastard. But somehow she got him to go back to the doctors 3 more times before they finally referred him for a biopsy. He nearly died twice during treatment, but he's alive and well today in his 60s, thanks to her badgering him over and over and not letting up. Left to his own devices, I'm sure he'd be dead by now. But for any women out there, this is not just a man problem, although I admit, based on anecdotal evidence, women are more likely to ask for medical help. But on to our next story. My mother was the opposite of Gran. She hated taking us children to the doctor and would do anything to get out of it. My sister fell off her bike when she was 8 and got a rusty nail in her arm, which left a really nasty 4-inch scar. Mum and Gran had a huge fight about it, but Mum won. No hospital for my sister, not even tetanus jab. She eventually got rid of the scar in adulthood with plastic surgery. It was that bad. Now, I have terminal cancer, fortnightly chemo, and I still feel like a hypochondriac, which means I hate asking anyone for help. In 11 months, I've asked a family member for help exactly 1 time. It's almost pathological, and who knows if I'd thought I'd be believed or helped, I might have gone to the doctors sooner. I went for something totally unrelated and mentioned the abdominal pain as an aside. It came and went, and I was sure they'd dismiss it as female problems, totally normal. The doctor really did not like how my abdomen felt, and she admitted me to hospital that day. The next day I got my terminal diagnosis. I've also noticed I'm hoarding my meds, something I did in childhood in case I needed them again. Only recently did I realize that's not normal behavior, and honestly, people are throwing drugs at me to counter the side effects, including morphine for the cancer pain, and there's no reason to think I'm going to be cut off at any point. I even asked my consultant about the danger of becoming dependent on morphine, and was told you don't need to worry about that. Yet still, my impulse was to deprive myself of pain relief, just in case I needed some at a later date, and didn't have it. To be fair, becoming dependent was also a worry for me, so regardless I try not to take the morphine unless I need it. I have good days and bad days, so I naturally end up with spares, but I don't hoard them anymore, and I don't deprive myself when I need them. If you're worried about your health, even a small issue, go to a doctor. If it doesn't go away, or you're still worried, toughsty, go to a doctor or get a second opinion. Health is not something you can put off and faff around with. It will catch up to you eventually. It's one of the reasons single men live shorter lives than married men, because single men don't have wives and girlfriends nagging them to go and see a doctor. We were out dirt biking on this rocky, gravelly single track on a steep slope. My dad tipped his bike over. We couldn't get it back on the trail because the slope was too steep. So he walked the dirt bike to 300 pounds down this super steep loose shale slope about 100 feet to the next switchback, and then rode back to the trailer. His leg was fractured the whole time. Dude long ago was skiing with my dad, and he screwed up and destroyed his right knee. Ski patrol gets him to the lodge and tries to put him in an ambulance, and he refused it. I ain't paying for a Fafkin ambulance ride. So he hobbled back to the parking lot and drove us the 2 hours home with his left foot. Second grader in the passenger seat and icy winding roads with excruciating pain. I like to make fun of him for it, ha ha ha. I remember riding my bike on an island while on vacation. Hit the ground and my elbow on the edge on the sidewalk. No hospital on the island next, and last ship for the day was going in minutes. Rushing there in pain. It has been hours since the accident when I arrived at the hospital. Assist had same surname as me. I never see this name outside of my family. She asked who my father was. Told the first name, and she knew exactly who I am, about my dad, his dad, granddad, uncle, everything. It was quite beat sorry. To this day it holds up that every person I ever met with my surname is a relative of mine. And no, I won't tell you because of this exact reason. Like most men in the world, they deny that there is anything needing adjustment when it comes to their mental health. We told him he needed to get checked out. He knew he was going down and rejected any offers. In the end, he made a sly joke about being put on antidepressants, but he already knew he wasn't going to be there long enough to receive help. I think you're right that it is a reluctance in some men to seek medical help in some situations. But I think in a lot of people in general USA, it's a stupid high deductible out of pocket and stupid low co-insurance that dissuades people, men especially, since they are typically the primary income earner for families, from seeking healthcare. As a man, I think it will pass. Then I don't really want to spend 1-2K for a checkup that might result in a walk-it-off diagnosis. My stepdad was in his late 60s when he said he was going to motorcycle cross-country. He has a bad back, hips, shoulders, knees, and had not ridden his bike more than 5 miles at a time in years. He relented to my mother's objections on the sheer stupidity of this, and agreed on a shorter week-long trip. Apparently after day 1 of a few hundred miles, he was in a lot of pain, but pressed on. The second day, he wiped out on some black ice in the mountains, and was rescued by a retired professor in an RV who let him stay with him for a few days. My stepdad was in even more pain, but when he called my mom nightly, he acted like all was fine. Then he rode home in pain, and was thinking he'd hide the pain from my mom, but nope. She insisted he go to the hospital, and apparently he'd broken one of his clavicles. I agree our society could do a lot to help men's health. Mental health in general is shunned by many cultures, but it is changing. On Men's Day this year, never knew there was such a thing. My company sent out a Mental Health is Health type brochure with a quick guide to all the mental services offered to employees. Then on Thanksgiving, I was at the grocery store by myself, but basically just a shopping cart filled with beer and M&Ms. Random stranger walks by, smiles, and hands me little index card with like 10 men's outreach programs in the neighborhood. Total stranger. No reason, just thought I looked down with the cart full of booze and thought to reach out. Kinda made me smile. Hopefully, the ship is beginning to turn and will get better for our sons and grandsons. A year ago, I was riding motorcycle with girlfriend behind me. We had a terrible accident, both our right legs were terribly injured and swollen, but I insisted to ride 4 more hours on the 2-lane highway in the hills. We were on a trip away from our home city, slept through the injury, visited the destination city a bit the next day, and the another day returned home, all the while riding motorcycle. In hindsight, it was completely stupid, but man, I'll have a tale to tell our kids someday. My husband never really did pedicures before we met, and the first time I did one for him, he was in love with it. I used a scraper to get the dead skin off his heels, he calls them hooves, haha, and he was horrified how much came off. He'll even inspect my work now and say, "This toenail is a little jagged, do you want me to look a mess?" He likes being pampered, and I'm happy to do it for him. I was trying on jeans for work the other day, and I found this magical material that stretches but looks like denim. I was gushing over them, and my wife laughed and said a lot of women's jeans use that material and a lot of hers are the same. Men should discover these jeans. A lot of responses are about the inferior quality. Fair enough, but I work retail and am constantly squatting to fill shelves, etc., so I'll take comfort over durability any day. Especially when I've got a bit of an S's on me. Customers don't need to be walking around the corner and catching a plumber's crack unexpectedly. I'm so tired of only finding stretchy jeans in the women's sections. I would like my pants to be much more sturdy so I don't have to keep buying pants. Elastic degrades from laundering much faster than true denim, and you never attain that soft broken-in feeling before it's full of holes. I have young kids, so playing on the ground and being outside just K1Ls the pants, so I'm going in the men's section now, but it's getting stretchy over there too. My 26-year-old cousin got her mom and dad into yoga with her, and amazingly the dad is now probably more into yoga than the entire rest of the family. He's been a car mechanic his entire life, and absolutely loves it. He said it has worked out some pains he's been dealing with for decades. My university had free yoga twice a week, and it probably took my roommate a year to convince me to go. I never missed a day again. It is like stretching with some optional light exercises and meditation all rolled into one. It really helped my recovery from workouts, and the teacher was always willing to take suggestions for specific areas people wanted to work on if I had pain or soreness. I went to the doctor when I was 22. I had fucking shingles coming in on the nerve on the right side of my skull and losing my eyesight. The pain was so bad. Dear thought I was faking it for pills. Even though I weighed 220 and was muscular, not a normal junkie body type, and had no previous medical history of pill usage or abuse. It took a nurse spending lots of time asking me questions to then scream at the ear doctor, "Discharge me, call my dermatologist and get me an emergency appointment." I was 1 millimeter from losing my eyesight permanently and having a damaged nerve to shingles. Dermatologist put me on 8 different medications to fight it, minimize pain, and strengthen my immune response. Had to have an emergency eye appointment same day too. The hospital billed me $7,000 for doing Jack fucking shit to help, and that was 8 years ago. The dermatologist billed me $300 and eye doctor $300. FAFK, dear FAFK, overworked 16-hour shift doctors and FAFK pouring more money into the medical system for hospital admins and CEOs. I hope anyone working in healthcare admin gets what they deserve coming to them.